Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be providing some critique for Fallout 70. That's right, we're going to jump straight to it. The game, personally, I feel is one of the least interesting games I have played in a long time, but rather than go off on some big old rant about all of the things wrong with it, there are a lot of videos out there and reviews doing so. I'm going to be focusing in on one key point. This is why doing a quest for someone that's dead is not particularly interesting. Now, if you're not aware, within this game, they have decided to remove all NPCs, and they have basically mixed up the canon so that everyone within the vault is alive and everyone outside the vault has died, mutated, etc. There is no intelligent life outside of the vault, bar a few artificial intelligences that are still roaming around. So, what have they done instead? Well, you will come out of the vault and you will come across the remnants of people, be it their physical remains or evidence that they once had tasks to do. You will generally pick up these things and try and finish, defend, or do something to continue on their memory in some way. I can only be quite vague because really the quests often feel quite vague. The result is often the same as any other fucking quest in the world. It is walk over here, go over there, kill 3 of these, listen to something for a while, or just fucking scratch your head and wonder what the hell is going on. This is pretty much the quest design within Fallout, and Fallout is a still questing-based game. However, this is where things get very, very confused. They have gone for a questing-based game within a genre that typically doesn't include NPCs, and I can admit in their defense, if you look at games like Conan, it's not quest-heavy, not a lot of NPCs. Yeah, there's humans in there, and yeah, you can converse every now and again, but I wouldn't say quest-heavy, it's task-heavy. You have a list of things you can do to get bonus experience, but really it's about just enjoying that sandbox. Within Fallout, they still wanted to include the quest mechanic, but decided to do it without NPCs. So basically they wanted there to be a prolonged grind, not in terms of tasks to achieve, just random shit to do to make you go around the world. And here is the big problem with this. You see, everything that Bethesda have come out with for God knows how long has generally been a clunky combat system in a rather bland world with a very interesting quantity of NPCs. I think it's safe to say that pretty much every, even Elder Scrolls game, let alone Fallout, has been, or would be, a very dull combat simulator if you took all of the NPCs out, and a pretty dull walking simulator as well. The maps themselves have occasional things to find of interest within most of their games, I can take my hat off to that, but it's always the stories, the individuals, and the narrative of those individuals that make the world come alive. And this is where questing within games should shine. Questing, from a player's point of view, should be the thing that makes you come away having changed your view about that world or gained a view about the world, even if it's something as trivial as a guy in a bar that wants you to kill a mud crab inside of the cellar because he can't go in there and get his mystical ale of whatever the schmardy-blah. That's more interesting than just, oh, would you mind killing this rat? It's a lot better because it makes you think, okay, well, there's a guy that runs a bar. Okay, there are monsters that are hiding within certain places that these people can't fight themselves, so I must be some sort of hero. Maybe if I do this and go back to the barkeeper, he will have some form of relation or task for me, or there will be some form of monetary gain. Maybe he's got a very spicy daughter, who knows? Well, that is more interesting, it's safe to say, because the quest has potential meaning. When you have characters that are still alive, you have an extra dimension of, I wouldn't say potential reward, but perhaps that is a good way to explain it. You might be doing a quest for money, you might simply be doing it because you want to see the NPC's reaction to it, you might just be doing it because you feel it's the right thing to do within the context of that world. But this all changes and this all goes out the window when the NPC that is effectively giving you the quest is already fucking dead. And this is where I am amazed and surprised that anyone, when designing this system, honestly thought that players would find it interesting because, yes, there is some fairly healthy voice acting within the game. I say healthy in that there's a lot of it and it's not particularly poorly acted and it's not particularly poorly written, but it's fucking boring. And it's boring for a couple of reasons. Firstly, you can never visualize who's saying it to you. You don't know what their age or face is, you can only guess by the voice, you don't know what their emotions or body language are saying. It's all just listening to them talk, and what makes it even less immersive is once they start talking, you can continue to run over the hills and far away, and they're still yapping in your ear, which makes you actually question your own sanity rather than actually think, okay, I'm gaining valuable information from a person in a said place. It ends up disconnecting you from the quest even further by simply being able to disconnect from the location where you get the quest from, while still listening to someone yap in their ear about whatever sandwich they had or some bollocks. It is, I think, just a gross oversight to think that a player is going to view a quest coming from a dead individual the same as a living one. And this isn't a knock on human beings, but it's safe to say that we are built to empathise and have social relations with people that are still alive. And we can go for those situations in a computer game, fair enough. We don't walk around our everyday life thinking what we can do to continue the tasks that dead people hadn't finished to do. This is not really within human nature. There are perhaps exceptions, and maybe I'm generalising. I'm not saying dead people aren't important here, but you're not going to think, oh man, this guy that I've never met in my entire life, he wanted to plant a tree, so I'm going to go plant a tree for him today. You're not going to do that, because a lot of those dimensions which would typically give you a quest incentive within a computer game, such as, oh, the person might thank me, I might get a reward. It's the moral thing to do. But let's face it, if you're doing it because it's a moral thing, well, chances are you still want to go back to them so they can thank you and you're going to feel good about yourself. There's a reward for doing it. Well, the problem is, again, we come back to the central point, is if that person is already fucking dead, and once you've done it, you get a mysterious quantity of loot just appear in your hands, the entire experience is underwhelming. And I think this is going to go down within the gaming industry as maybe something to learn from, because I personally think that it is a mess, a disaster. It is perhaps not the worst game in the world, and maybe there can be other things that make the game more interesting, but the lack of NPCs and the lack of any sense of an actual world around you is immensely dull. Setting aside NPCs for a moment, think of the implications of not having them. All of a sudden you have no passive faction warfare beside what is created by players. Okay, you can make the argument that if you have enough players, you can have some form of interesting warfare going on, but let's face it, with 24 players on a server, which are on quite a few servers that I've heard of, I'm not actually sure what the max player count is, but that's not enough to create an interesting diorama of events. As well as that, you'll have no political movements, no motivations, nothing to actually add meaning, nothing to say what this faction has been at war with them because of a long-standing history, because one person kidnapped another, or because one person murdered another person's brother and stole the crown. There is nothing to add an extra sense of immersion, and it keeps you very, very distanced from the game by not having these simple things which have been part of gaming for so many years. And once again, I do come back to the fact that some games out there don't have many NPCs. There are a lot of sandbox building, adventure, survival games, let's say like Conan Exiles, that are semi-competent in keeping you interested because you simply want to focus on building and survival. That's mainly that's what's going to keep you going in that game and prevent you from falling asleep. Then there are some mechanics which force the player into having a more intense experience by every now and again threatening your survival. Fallout hasn't done any of that at all. It hasn't really done much at all in that respect. It has the occasional event where a mob will come along, but in a game that has such shitty combat, I question why they try to place the emphasis on that. And then there's a huge amount of build limitation too in terms of the actual distance you can build, and I kind of understand it in some levels, but then in the other you have a far more restricted base than other games of the genre. And yet again, you're competing against other games that are typically advertised as being in early access with a price point about a third of the price as your fucking game. That is pretty much everything I have to say on this shitty quest design. It is, as I see it, nothing but a disastrous choice. I think the emphasis was to try and get people to interact with each other, but my opening experience within this game was trying to complete the tutorial with someone breathing heavily down the mic because there was no push to talk at the time, and just wanting to be able to mute everyone else so I could actually listen to something while someone was talking in my ear in a foreign language, clearly speaking to their grandma or someone else who was next to them. It did not work in the slightest. It was nothing but a frustrating experience. Guys, you might think of me as just a salty Fallout fan. Well, I tell you what, once again, this is the first Fallout game I've played. This is, as I see it, simply objectively bad and poor design choices that are making this game suffer. Fuck knows what they were thinking, but we're going to keep our eyes on this one, see if they can do anything to salvage it. Guys, have a great day. See you around.